Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rooted. I am your host, Natalie Andrea, and in this episode, we are going to be diving into the loaded topic of medication, the pros, the cons, hopefully some deeper considerations, options, and inquiries around medication that perhaps you haven't thought of, and all with the goal of really empowering you to feel into what is true and best for you in your unique circumstances, regardless of the opinions and pressures of medical professionals, of people within your life. Regardless of all of that, what is actually true for you based on your own unique set of circumstances? What energies and resistances are present within you? Because I feel like no one thing is inherently good or bad. We are all so unique in terms of our soul blueprint and our lessons and our paths. And so, what may work for one person may not for another. And what may have worked for you at one point in your life may not in another, and vice versa. And so this isn't necessarily about what's right or wrong or giving you some sort of definitive answer or swaying you either way. My intention is really to just open up a conversation here and to hopefully move or spark something within you and to look at all the different facets that are involved in the decision to use medication, to not use medication, and what other options or alternatives are out there. Because I know this has been near and dear to my heart at various points within my journey. And I know the same is true with the clients that I work with as well. It's often this state of feeling like they're a little bit in between a rock and a hard place, in the sense of they're experiencing these symptoms or this pain that is or is borderline debilitating, in the sense of if they didn't do something about the pain to manage it, they would not be able to function within their lives, within their roles of mother, within their jobs, their careers. And so oftentimes the women that come into my orbit are women who aren't necessarily loving being on medication, often desire to somehow move away from medication or to somehow learn some sort of alternative to medication. Because most of us are aware, at least on some level, that most medications aren't actually treating the symptom. They're not actually curing anything or creating any sort of change from within, but rather they are managing or masking the discomfort or pain. Maybe some medications are delaying things or slowing things down on some level, but most of the time they are not actually addressing the very root of what it is that's going on within the body. And so most of the women that enter my field are wanting to actually learn more about the root within their body on the energetic levels, the more subtle energetic, emotional, mental, and even spiritual levels. And I myself have used a lot of different medications throughout my journey, going from Advil and from Tylenol to manage chronic fevers and joint pain and inflammation within my body, to longer term medications such as Plaquenil and methotrexate, as well as medium and large doses of the steroid prednisone for acute flares where I was having really severe or debilitating symptoms, hospitalizations, etc. There's a whole other slew of medications and pharmaceuticals and products that I have been injected and ingested within my body. And I, on one level, am thankful that there are those options that exist, because in those situations that I was in, they helped me through on some level to reach a state of homeostasis, of some form of stability so that I could continue along within my journey. I don't think that's the only way to go about reaching a state of stability or homeostasis, or to, for lack of a better word, snap the body out of a flare, out of a loud series of expressions and symptoms. I know it's not the only way because I've experienced other ways myself, but I am grateful that these options existed for me and they played a role within my journey. And I don't, like I said, think that they are inherently good or bad. And I have also experienced firsthand the side effects that come along with those medications. The physical side effects that often require other medications, the emotional side effects, the mental side effects as well. If you've ever been on any sort of steroid or anything that affects your mood, I know you'll know what I'm speaking about, because I know for me, being on prednisone over a series of months, it affected my moods on so many levels, And even the side effects themselves and the ways that the prednisone changed my body, the way that it caused me to, it literally changed my appearance. Like, I had the moon face where my face was like double the size in width. And like seeing myself like that definitely had an emotional toll. It triggered me in an emotional way. And the rage, like we talk about like prednisone rage and the side effect of like the anger that comes along with that, which is really interesting to consider once you start to dive into the deeper energetic layers beneath autoimmune symptoms to begin with. The rage, the anger, the emotional pieces around appearance, looking in the mirror, those are often at the energetic roots of autoimmune disease, or there's often variants of those pieces involved to begin with. So it's interesting that they come up as invitations, as side effects in working with medication as well, because it's almost like there's that another invitation or opportunity there being presented to unpack those pieces within ourselves on deeper levels. But of course, when I was taking those drugs, I did not have those levels of awareness, so I wouldn't have known. I was just experiencing the side effects, and some of which required further medication as well. And so when we're looking at the cons of medication, that's just it. It's the fact that most of the time it's not any sort of treatment or cure when it comes to the root of what it is that the body is expressing and why, but rather a Band-Aid, a mask, something there to help manage the pain. And that mask, that Band-Aid, often comes along with side effects. So that is one of the cons with medication, is the side effects and the impact on the body of the material within that medication. And I think that's that piece in terms of being stuck between a rock and a hard place that I hear so many of the women that I work with speak of is, I can't experience this pain anymore, but I really don't like having to take this medication and to put this into my body over the long term, because there's often an awareness there that there are toxins, there are metals, there are things and substances within medication that the body cannot just pass. It often accumulates within our organs, a concept called bioaccumulation. And so it's that push-pull and that really uncomfortable place to be in, where it doesn't feel right, but it also feels necessary in the moment. And I have been there. And if you are currently taking medication, my intention is not to create further fear around the impacts on your physical body, because your physical body is inherently intelligent. And when we connect with its intelligence, we are able to fully cleanse and clear our bodies and return to a state of ease. I believe that with all of my being. And it's just something to be aware of in the midst of this discussion. The other piece with medication in terms of the con that I find that perhaps you might not have thought about is that it can mask or take away the pain or discomfort that you are experiencing to the extent that it gives this false sense that things are good for the time being. What I mean by that is pain and discomfort often create this catalyzing effect, this almost like motivation for change. When we experience some sort of discomfort, whether that is physical, that's often what motivates us to seek some sort of answer or resolution of the discomfort. When we experience some sort of discomfort that is emotional or mental in nature, when it gets loud enough, it often motivates us to resolve the root of what it is that's causing the discomfort. So when something arises that creates discomfort or pain, it provides us with that feedback that says, this is not what I want to be experiencing. And it almost informs us of what we do want to be experiencing. And then we can, not always do, but we can take action towards that direction of what it is that we want to be experiencing. So in that way, discomfort and pain can be a powerful catalyst for change. And when that pain or discomfort is masked through the Bandaid of medication, what I find is it can almost alleviate or dissipate that inherent motivation to heal, to dig deeper. That being said, this operates on a spectrum. So maybe you remember back in your school days hearing about eustress versus distress and the graph that we all probably saw. So like stress, I see the same with discomfort and pain in the sense of a certain level of stress can be really helpful or positive to actually motivate, to bring all of your senses online, to engage you to complete the task at hand. That is eustress. It's that supportive, positive, healthy kind of stress. And I see discomfort or pain in the same way. There is a certain level of pain or discomfort that is supportive, that motivates, that brings your senses online, that engages you, and that brings your attention forwards towards something, whatever it is that's requiring your attention. However, there then becomes a point where that eustress or that positive, supportive level, magnitude of pain or stress becomes distressful, and it actually starts to have an opposite effect where it can become overwhelming to the system. So instead of actually engaging or activating the system, activating your senses to come more online, it can actually cause you to start to shut down because it's just too much for the system to handle. And that's what you would then call distress. So pain and discomfort, I sort of see on that same spectrum where some level of pain or discomfort can actually be really positive. When you bring medication into the mix, that can dissipate. And so this is where you see people that are sort of coasting on their medication. They're okay. They don't have much motivation to actually dig deeper into the deeper levels and layers, versus someone who is having more discomfort or pain present. It all of a sudden prioritizes what it is that's going on within the body. And I know that was true for me. I know for me, I did not have the motivation to actually go into the deeper layers, to open the box to all of the things that I previously wouldn't have tried or considered without things getting really, really loud. So to me, I see that as a drawback of medication. Those are kind of the main cons, the main drawbacks that I see. And moving into the positives though, what I just mentioned there in terms of like that distressful level of pain that can actually cause someone to shut down, that can overwhelm them. There are times where the level of pain or like the severity of symptoms can be so strong that it becomes consuming to the point where you don't really have the space to even look at the deeper layers because you are just survival. You're in survival mode. You're surviving. And so in that sense, I feel like medication can be really helpful to create an equilibrium within your body, to create some space and some capacity by decreasing the level of pain, the discomfort, and the symptoms that are present to a more manageable level so that you actually have the space to heal and look at the deeper layers. So that can be one of the biggest pieces when it comes to the pros here. I'm trying to consider the other pros. That I would say is the main one, is managing pain to an acceptable level where you actually have the space to go into the deeper layers. And so I've actually had clients in the past where this one particular client, she was resistant towards medication, and she was aware of all of the facets that I've touched on here, and kind of using medication to numb as well was present for her. And so she was actually resistant to medication. And for her, she actually found a great deal of space and increased ease within her by surrendering to medication, whether that was temporary or not. Kind of like the act of surrendering to it liberated something within her that was otherwise really fixated on controlling, resisting, and not using medication. So this is what I mean by there can be so many dynamics involved, and it's so unique for each person. Because if you are somebody who struggles with surrendering or are feeling deeply resistant to medication, I mean, the question is that resistance intuition, or is that fear? Is that the fear voice talking? And it's not an easy question to answer. But say, for example, if you are someone who has soul lessons around surrender, on integrating with more of the human aspects of life, or like with the systems that we have here, so that you can be in and amongst the systems. Isn't that funny? Symptoms kind of sounds like systems. If you have lessons around that, surrendering to the use of certain medications might actually liberate that energy within you. So instead of fighting against it, you are actually relaxing into it and accepting what is in a way that creates so much more space within you. And what I mentioned just there, the fighting with it. A lot of the times in immersions and one-on-one sessions, what emerges is some sort of internal fight within somebody, something that they are actually fighting within themselves. And when we look at the emotional, mental, energetic roots of symptoms of dis-ease, especially autoimmune symptoms, because autoimmune, you are attacking yourself. The body is attacking itself. And on some level, there is a part of you attacking another part of you inside, hence that fighting with yourself regarding a decision. And so when it comes to medication specifically, this particular client kind of eased that fight within herself by surrendering to using medication for a temporary period of time, as well as creating more space within her system, more capacity to actually dig deeper. So the act of actually surrendering to utilizing medication created the space for her to go deeper into some of the emotional, energetic layers within her at the very root of her symptoms. And so this is why there can be no definitive right or wrong, and why it's so important to really tune into what is present for you, what energetics and dynamics are involved for you, and whether it is a pull from your intuition to consider an alternative, to look at some sort of alternative homeopathic, holistic, naturopathic option, or even an energy-based option, which I feel like is really going to assist you in targeting the root of what you're experiencing on a deeper level. But if your intuition and you're feeling the pull towards that, and that doesn't mean that you can't do that with medication as well, but that would be an example of like feeling the pull, the curiosity, the draw, being led by the voice of your intuition, which I feel like really is the voice of our souls speaking to us. That doesn't mean there won't be some resistance there as well. We can often face resistance towards following the voice of our intuition because it often asks us to go beyond what is familiar, or perhaps what we have done in the past. And so when we are stepping outside of what is familiar, that can challenge the ego because it's the unknown. And perhaps on some level, you may perceive or be able to feel subconsciously that you may have to face or feel things that you haven't faced or felt yet, or to see things within yourself that you haven't met yet. And that can be scary to certain parts of us, the parts of us that want to be in control, that are used to being in control. And it's interesting how the familiar, even if it's like the familiar discomfort, can sometimes feel safer than the unknown, even if that unknown is something that could liberate so much freedom within ourselves and so much more ease within our body. The discomfort of the unknown can be more uncomfortable than the familiar discomfort of physical pain within our bodies. And so I just wanted to bring that in because when we are following the voice of our intuition and what feels true for us, that doesn't mean that it's going to feel comfortable or easy. In fact, in my experience, it's often not felt comfortable or easy to follow the voice of my intuition, to follow my heart, because it often deeply challenges our ego and our mental constructs and our beliefs and our programming and all of the things and ways that we've developed to protect ourselves and to cope. This whole familiar bubble and structure that we've created around ourselves, it often requires that to crumble to some degree, to look outside, to step beyond into the unknown. And the reality is, when we are looking at actually addressing the roots of autoimmune disease, any sort of disease for that matter, what we're looking at when we're looking at addressing it on the energetic level is actually becoming the version of you that is no longer an energetic match to those symptoms, to that disease, and to the very underlying patterns that are at the root of those symptoms that you experience. So oftentimes it does require change, which is uncomfortable at times. For me, the level of fulfillment and what I have gained through stepping into that discomfort and into the resistance has been the medicine that has allowed me to address the very symptoms. Like the act of facing the discomfort, the act of stepping into and feeling through the emotions that perhaps haven't been felt. Seeing and meeting the parts of yourself and holding the parts of yourself that you meet in that process is the very medicine that addresses the symptoms that you experience. And so it's beyond worth it. It's actually which medicine do you want to take? And I think when the discomfort associated with one way of being starts to outweigh the fear of trying something new, is often when we're ready to make a change, or when we finally decide to take action to make a change. And that's not good or bad. I feel like that is literally part of the human condition and part of our psyche. But in this discussion of medication, it's either the familiar medication that is known to us and established within our medical system that is going to manage or mask the pain, or stepping into the unknown medicine of actually meeting ourselves and meeting those deeper energetic layers. And that medicine is potent. And it's not a Bandaid. It transforms you from within. And it's such a beautiful process. And that's really what I help women do. And it's really looking at those deeper layers, which, of course, depends on what it is that your goals are. Maybe certain souls have paths where that's not really on the forefront of what it is that they are exploring within their experience. Perhaps for you, your goal is just to be out of pain as you're pursuing something else, and that's okay. However, if you feel the pull or that draw to actually heal and to address the roots of what's going on within your body, if you have the sense that like there has to be a better way than being in pain like this for the rest of my life, or experiencing my symptoms like this for the rest of my life, or maybe you're starting to hear stories of people that have overcome symptoms or illness or dis-ease, and you're starting to believe that that may be possible for you, perhaps your goal is a little bit different, and it's not just to be out of pain, but also to heal the underlying roots of what it is that's going on within your system. Maybe it's a combination of both of those things. It's usually the pain that drives the desire to heal. And of course, in order to have that desire to heal, you have to believe that that is possible. And that's one of my intentions and why I've created this space, is to actually share my own story and the stories of the women that I work with, to hopefully expand that opening in your belief around healing. Because I have seen women heal from rheumatoid arthritis, joint pain, autoimmune hepatitis, hearing loss. I've seen people actually recover their hearing after having a hearing aid. I've seen all sorts of magical, wildly just divine things happen. And you don't have to look far, even on the internet, to search for those types of stories. And of course, everyone's story is a little bit different. And for some, it is looking at some of the more physical layers within the body. And there are so many different herbs and foods that can actually support your body in healing and in decreasing inflammation, and things that you can remove from your diet to remove the toxic load that is burdening your system and impeding its ability to do what it does to function at its best. So on a physical level, there are options aside from just medication, where there are things you can both remove from your diet and from your environment to reduce your toxic load, to reduce inflammatory substances within your diet. And that's both personal care products as well as foods. And then there's also pieces that you can add in to support your body. And I highly suggest going to see a naturopath, putting it out there, setting your intention out within the universe, with spirit, with God, whatever it is that you believe in, to bring that in. If that is something that you are feeling the pull towards, setting the intention of, this is something that I would like to explore, and seeing what your options are, because that is definitely not my specialty and jam. I have things that'll sometimes come up within sessions or immersions that can be supportive to individuals. But I mean, for me, on a kind of general level, decreasing the toxic stuff within my makeup, within deodorant, within soap, conditioner, hair products, cleaning products, all of that has been huge, as well as removing gluten, dairy, soy, seed oils, processed foods, like starting to look at the ingredient labels. And if you can't pronounce it and you don't know what it is, and it's not a real food, it's probably something that's not helping your body. So starting to become aware of what it is that you're putting in your body to help support your body to function at its best. And then looking at certain herbs and supplements that can help to both detoxify, cleanse, and if there are any pathogens, any parasites, any sort of viruses or bacteria that are present within your body, to start cleansing and clearing those out. That can be really, really helpful. And I've mentioned in a past episode, the medical medium Anthony William is a really, really great resource for that. And then there's, of course, my whole world and what it is that I teach, which is actually going into the deeper energetics of what it is that would actually allow a pathogen, a virus, a parasite to live within your system to begin with. Because believe it or not, there are certain traits and energetic patterns that allow those pathogens to exist within your system. And then looking at the energetic dynamics and patterns within you, emotionally, mentally, your relationship that you have with yourself, with your body, with aspects of yourself that you may repress, deny, that you may feel shame around, those energetics within you, when you are fighting aspects of yourself, are often at the very core of autoimmune symptoms. And so within my immersion, my signature immersion called Rooted, which is starting later this month, those are the very themes that we explore. And it's a curated journey over 12 weeks, consisting of self-paced teachings, practices, and recordings, as well as live clinics where you can come in and actually be immersed in what it is that is underlying the symptoms that you experience, receiving one-on-one guidance and feedback and deeper inquiry around what it is that's present for you, and developing both a foundation in the now to start to process through those deeper layers, as well as the tools to take forward with you. The very framework that I share is the one that I still utilize when I have messages come up from within my body, or when I have contrast show up within my life, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, something that is triggering me in some way, shape, or form. That's often an invitation and a portal into our deeper healing, into a part of us that is not yet free. That's what a trigger is. It's often an emotional reaction, a heightened emotional response, or response within our body or system to some external stimulus. But we all react to different external stimulus. What triggers one person doesn't necessarily trigger another person. And that's because it's actually from within us. It's based on our experiences, often our unpacked experiences and repressed emotions or beliefs that we hold that are being triggered or bumped up against with those experiences as a portal for us to actually unpack on deeper levels, to integrate, to reconcile, to free ourselves of those beliefs that are actually not based in truth, but more based in programming, conditioning, illusion, old parts of ourselves that are coming up to be transformed. And so those are the pieces that we explore within Rooted. I also teach tools and practices that you can use to actually discern what it is that's going on within your body at the root, whether it is something physical that needs your physical attention and what that resolution would be. Building up the trust within you to actually trust that, whether it is something emotional, mental, or even spiritual for you to consider. These are all tools that I teach and create the space for each of those that are enrolled in Rooted to explore. And I mean, the answers are really within you. When it comes to medication, when it comes to resolution and your body's innate capacity to heal, it's all within you. And it's a matter of seeing and delayering all the parts of you that are conditioned to believe otherwise, or that have forgotten, or that simply have not come into contact with your internal power, with that trust within yourself. And so it's this coming home, it's this returning to your innate power and reconciling all the parts of yourself that are not in congruence with that don't believe that. And so tying it all together with medication, there is no right or wrong. Sometimes it's a matter of surrendering to what is and the options that are available to you so that you can create space within your system to explore deeper layers. And if that means surrendering to temporary use of medication, perhaps that's exactly what it is that you need in this moment. And can that be okay? And trusting that you will be able to work through the steps that follow, whether that means coming off the medication, shifting into something different, meeting a different, deeper layer within yourself in the process. Or maybe for you, you're feeling the call to try something different and go into the deeper energetic layers. So really discerning whether that is, what are those energies at play within you? Is this a voice of your intuition? Is it something within your heart that you're feeling called to follow, even if it goes against the norms? Or is it something that you're being called to surrender to, even if it scares you? So my invitation, if you are taking medication, if that's something that you are perhaps facing, is to create some space to tune into what it is that would be the most loving and expansive thing for you to do in this moment right here. Not thinking 2 years, 5 years down the line, what would be the most loving thing for you within your body at this point in time. And if you were to tune out all the noise, of course, this doesn't mean not listening to the advice of professionals. We want to be able to listen to others, ideally, and filter it through our own lens of what is true for us, and to be able to hear that voice within ourselves, ideally. At least that's what I would love for myself and what I endeavor to move towards myself. And so really creating the space to tune out the noise, to consider the opinions of others, of professionals, but to consider what it is that your body is communicating with you and telling you. What are you feeling a yes towards? What are you feeling a no towards? And trusting that. And it doesn't always feel comfortable or safe. It does not always feel comfortable or safe, but trusting that you will be guided and supported in each step along the way. Trying your best to stay conscious and intentional throughout the journey. That is my biggest goal, is to empower any of you that are listening to really tune into and listen to that own inner voice and what is true and best for you, regardless of the noise of what is going on around you, to support your body. And sometimes that right there, again, is the medicine, regardless if it means taking it or not taking it. And so I hope this conversation has been valuable to you in some way, shape, or form. If you have or maybe are currently in this journey of experiencing symptoms and looking at different types of medication, or maybe you're on medication, you are certainly not alone. And I see you. I see you in all of the different dynamics and emotions and thoughts and inner conflicts that come along with this whole theme and discussion. And I really invite you to just remember your power and who you are and why you came here, because there is so much intelligence that exists within our body into what is bringing you into this space to begin with, to tune into this conversation. If you are listening, it's not by coincidence. And so if any of this is resonating with you, if you're feeling the inner pull, I invite you to apply for Rooted. Applications are open now. And I'm also offering a 10% discount on enrollment for the month of June 2025 for founding members. The code is Rooted NA10. Reach out to me for details. I'm happy to discuss any of your questions, and I will see you in the next episode.